goes. Here he comes. So, describe climbing to somebody who has no idea what the hell it is.
Oh, crikey. So in some ways, I guess, climbing isn't really taught and is one of the most natural things that we can do.
Here he comes. Go on, Sarah, keep going.
Actually pulling yourself up with your arms and your legs is where we evolved from apes.
Come on, keep going.
Getting tired, are you?
That's it.
Having spent years and years climbing trees, it was a very, very natural thing for me, and I found it very easy. So I think rock climbing is a natural thing for humans to do.
Well done, Sarah.
He did it!
Thanks, Etta. Great camera work. What do you think? E3? Climbing and I have been friends for a while. Over 30 years, in fact. We have fallouts for sure, but we're still close. As I settle into my 4th decade, with a growing portfolio of injuries, a business to run, 3 kids, and a very busy life, some things have had to take a back seat. But I do miss climbing. It's many things: movement, freedom, connection to my body, to the landscape, adventures in a parallel dimension. As I emerge feeling rusty and not very brave, with a stronger sense of self-preservation and responsibilities to stick around for, what does climbing mean to me now? And do I still want to do it? Climbing is rich with stories, folklore, immortalised in books, route descriptions, photographs. It's a stage for strong characters. I've made a career as a storyteller, so what better way to explore the risk and reward of climbing than by telling the story of one of my climbing idols.
Hey,
Hello. Hello, Pooch. Hi.
This is Spike. Yes, he has to say hello to everybody.
So, you've got some entries in Extreme Rock. Is that right?
Yeah, I have one or two. There.
The Bible.
Well, so on Ben Nevis there's Agrippa, which was, I think it's E5, E6, and then the Risk Business, which is on Craigiebanker, which is in Glencoe, you'll know, on the Buckle. Run of the Arrow on Shelterstone. Naked Ape on Craig and Duloc, and another one. I think there are the 5.
Edge of Extinction's in there, is it?
No, Edge of Extinction didn't go in. They haven't been repeated. So there you go. It took 6 or 8 years after it was done before it got repeated.
So, In terms of new routes, how many do you think you've done?
Well, funny, you asked me that the other day, and I had to think about it. And I've just done a very quick tot in my head. It's over 1,300 anyway, but somewhere between there, 1,300 and 1,500. Yeah.
That's pretty impressive. I've done about 5.
Have you?
So that's like
Where are they?
1,305, which is an impressive total between us, I think.
Pretty good.
So I got Ed Cleesby.
Oh, you
Sent me this.
you sent me a picture of it, didn't you?
Yeah.
Fantastic. He sent you the picture. That's lovely of him, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I need to send it back. But,
Oh, that's the original, is it? Life in the Fast Lane, FA, First Ascent, Pete Whillance, 1980, Hodge Close. God, this is Ray Parker who was with me. So it was a very serious undertaking. And for the top pitch, involved me traversing horizontally left above a massive overhang. So it's not a place climbers like to be, really, traversing across the top of overhangs, because you know you're going to fall and over the overhang and down into the abyss below. Halfway across this traverse, you can see my peg hammer dangling. In the good old days, the ethic was that you placed pegs as you were climbing.
How old were you there? You look young.
1980, born 48, so what does that make it? 32?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
32.
Yeah.
I look quite young.
Yeah, you look young.
It's all relative. All
picture.
relative, mate. 76 now, so yeah, a few years ago. I'm wondering if we did Life in the Fast Lane on the same day as we did the other arret, Malice in Wonderland, because it was the 3 of us that did Malice in Wonderland, myself, Ray Parker, and Ed Cleesby, who turned up. Well, not part of our team, Ed, he was South Lakes climber, but he happened to turn up that day and asked to come along with us.
Mm-hmm.
I first became aware of Pete Whillance in my teens, a name that cropped up in guidebooks over and over again. I would gaze at the pictures, imagining stories of first ascents and death-defying climbs. It was the scary ones that excited me the most. Nearly 15 years ago, when I embarked on a career as a filmmaker, Pete was the subject of one of the first films I ever made. Over the years, I climbed some of Pete's routes, including a Hodge Close E6 with a reputation, stage fright. I think I loved it, but it took me closer to my limit than I've ever been, and I've not wanted to climb anything remotely hard since. But of late, I've been wondering about that high stakes place, and what it might be like to be back there. Making a film about a guy making a film. It's really, quite complicated. Well, here I am, Malice in Wonderland. Still don't know whether I'm brave enough for it, really. It's quite cold, and it's raining. Why anybody would go climbing in Spain, I don't know. What's wrong with this? Look. There's monsters and dead people in there. It does look amazing though.
Look at that rat. Wowee.
2 centuries ago, before tourism and national parks, Cumbria was an industrial heartland, a landscape dominated by farming, coppicing, mining and quarrying. Tilberthwaite and the valleys between Langdale and Coniston were exploited for a precious workable building material, slate. 90% of what came out of the ground was unusable and tumbled down through the woods in great heaps of spoil. The biggest of these workings, Hodge Close, was quarried until the 1960s, when it was declared unproductive and too dangerous to work. The deepest passageways filled with water, and nature began to take the space back. In the winter of 1980, Pete Whillance and Ray Parker, prospecting for new routes in the valley, unexpectedly stumbled across the biggest swathe of unclimbed rock in the Lake District, and quietly got to work. As you can perhaps tell, I've always loved quarries. And I'm not the only one.
So you still love this place then, Hodge?
Well, yeah. This is still the primary venue for slate climbing in the lake. But the whole area now is dotted with, as you know, it's dotted with old slate quarries. So, you know, lots of people died in these quarries and gave their lives to this, and it was a very, very hard way of life. And I think it's a bit like farming as well, quarrying, in that it's part of the landscape, it's part of the history around here. Hodge Close, I mean, its whole size, the scale of it is enormous. It's hard to imagine now, when you look down there at the lake, that there is the same amount of rock below the surface as there is at the surface. It was continuously being pumped out. But the scale of the operation must have been enormous, to think that there's still 300 feet below the surface there of going down. And what fantastic climbing there'd be if you took all that water out now, which I've often thought about, I must say. Early 80s, when we'd started climbing here, we'd already done a handful of routes, I don't know, 5, 6 routes on different parts. We knew that Eddie and Rob Matheson and the South Lakes Barrow teams were operating in here.
So those old rivalries have kind of smoothed out. You're all friends now?
Oh, we're all great friends now. Yeah. It was just one of those things at the time. We were all young, we were all competitive, but there was a lot of rivalry going on.
Would you consider yourself to be a competitive person, Pete?
Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. Going back to the day, you know, we all had our little black books. I had several. Lists upon lists of potential new routes for every crag in every area. I had boxes and boxes full of information. So wherever I went climbing, I would pick up the appropriate box. In that box would be every reference in every magazine to that particular area, to the new routes that had been done, to what had been repeated, what hadn't, every guidebook, every scrap of information. You're on their ground and you're trying to pinch their best routes, and you know some of their top climbers are after those as well. How is it not competitive, you know? You don't have to be a particularly competitive person. The situation drives that.
You were quite fanatical then.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So as time went by, started to move further and further afield with new routes. Even down in Cornwall and Devon, you know, did routes. But my great love was Scotland. We took long holidays up in Scotland, particularly looking for, you know, last great challenges, some of the big unclimbed pieces of rock. And ever since then, been really into it. This aspect of adventure and looking around the next corner that I mentioned before, you know, I've just always been into that. I just love that spirit of adventure.
As climbers, we all have our home turf. But Pete travelled extensively to establish new rock climbs, often high-risk undertakings that still stop great climbers in their tracks. I wanted to see one of these creations, but being way too scared to climb it myself, I called on two prolific characters in Scottish new routing.
I've actually never met Pete Whillance, but the routes that he did in the 80s were still among the kind of harder or more sought after mountain trad routes when I started climbing, which was just towards the start of the 90s. I'm from Glasgow, so I grew up travelling to the Arica area, and so you've got the cobbler and the brack, and if you look at the brack, it's just dominated by this big standout arête that catches the evening sun, which is the Edge of Extinction, which is Pete's E6 that he did in 1980. And then when you drive through Glencoe and you pass Craig of Anchor, that curving line that goes across the whole crag catches your eye, and that's the wrist business. So all of these big major lines were the lines that Pete came and opened. And so he was, at that time, he was among a small group of really committed people. Although I've never met him, still has this big influence on my life in a way, because you've got these big mountain trad routes that you kind of aspire to as a trad climber, but also he's opened many new areas which like open your eyes to new possibilities. Anyone who's doing new routes just always has a kind of outsized influence in a way on trad climbers, because they in a large extent they dictate what people aspire to.
Pete travelled far and wide, and he had the knowledge. I guess the kind of the new wave tactics of inspecting routes as well made a lot of cliffs much more accessible to good quality climbing. The Lakes is a really good example of that. That boom of hard climbing after Livesey left his mark, in the mid to late 70s. Pete Botterill, Jeff Lamb, they were doing some fantastic climbing down there. I think in some respects, it was a golden age of British rock climbing, like a second golden age really. But I would say there was definitely a friendly rivalry. We were all a wee bit paranoid about people taking each other's routes. There was a little bit of that going on. He's left an outstanding legacy of high quality routes in just about every quarter of the UK. From the southwest to Pembroke, North Wales, Scotland. What he did in Scotland was huge.
Pretty eerie. Wow, nice and exposed. That's cool, like just a lovely little in-cut crimp just where you want it over the bulge, just as you start to go, oh my god, this is quite tricky. Wow, brilliant.
Like a bit of a curved face. Then there's a couple more higher up.
While I was working in Manchester, and this is just mid to late 60s, soon as I could drive, I was out every other night into the Peak District, soloing, just soloing, night after night. I would do 50, 60 routes in an evening. So right from the word go in the routes that I climbed, I was less concerned, let's say, about protection. Almost any sport that you get into, you want to try to be as good as you can at it. It's a natural thing. What was particularly attractive to me in climbing was that it was a skill to improve, to perfect, but you actually put it against something important. I love football. I love cricket, rugby, but there weren't any consequences.
Consequences. Well, that's an important word, isn't it? Being honest with myself, the consequences of me falling down a rock face now could be pretty huge. I'm a dad and a partner, and I don't want to break my legs tumbling into an old quarry. But it's not simple. Adventure and risk are critical to our existence, and the link to mental and physical health has been extensively documented. We need adventure to stay well, and risk and adventure are intrinsically linked. Climbing has taught me to be brave, to form close bonds and to step up and trust myself. And as the world becomes more uncertain, I want my kids to learn all of that too. But it's often hard to understand where the line is between justifiable and unjustifiable risk.
Reach. Done. Yes. Carefully up. Nice, Etta. Well done. What else are you going to do? You're going to try
I don't know.
a rat? No, I think you're on fire.
Maybe.
Daddy.
Malice in Wonderland, E45C. The striking arête right of the corner gives a harrowing pitch. The roof is climbed right of the obvious line. The arête is then followed first on the left, then on the right, then straight up. Scary.
Okay. Here we go.
Yeah, man, I got you.
Many things in life are at a level of risk which is so slight that we don't allow it to concern ourselves. Even the things that are risky, you have to have a reasonable assessment of where that lies. And I think people don't. Get in a car with anybody and just watch how they behave.
Okay, Joe, I've got that cam in.
Through climbing, of course, that assessment, if you like, becomes more real, but also a much finer judgment.
Watch me, Joe.
Yeah, man, I'm with you.
If I walk out of the house this morning, there's a chance that the chimney pot, which I know actually is a bit loose, could slide down and land on my head and I'd be killed. But does that stop me going out? No, it doesn't.
Okay, now it's quite wobbly.
Do I think about it every day? No, I don't. Do I consider the potential consequences? No, I don't.
Right, I'm going to go for it, Joe.
Yeah, man, I'm with you. Right here, man.
Why? Because there's a level of probability. Risk is just about probability.
Yeah, Dom, that's it.
Oh, yes.
Well done, brother. Get in.
Oh, get in. Oh my God, that was amazing.
Tell me how you feel, mate.
Just felt like back in the zone. Felt really familiar, actually. I was like really worried about whether I was gonna get in that place and just go to pieces. And actually just felt really natural and flowy and fun. Didn't feel that scared.
Nice, mate.
Throughout human history, stories have helped us make sense of a confusing world. By telling other people's stories, living vicariously through them, we start to better understand our own. Pete has operated at the highest level, going places most of us would never have the bravery or motivation to go. And even in his 7th decade, he's just as passionate and driven now as he ever was.
Keith? It looks reasonable. I'm amazed. That top pitch looks reasonably dry.
Getting to know him, it's clear that I'll never have the fanaticism for climbing he has. But the truth is, I have my obsession, my high-stakes game. The one that gives me night sweats and impacts my family. And it's this: storytelling.
I need to clip what I did.
So this idea of kind of legacy, like leaving a legacy of climbs, it's not. I just get the sense that it doesn't bother you. Really.
No, it doesn't. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm proud of some of the routes that I've done, but it's not the reason I'm doing it. You know, if I wasn't doing it for what I get out of it, for the challenge for me, for the spirit of exploration, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it at all. You know. People can, not just in climbing, people can sit back and sort of just live and reflect back into their old glories of the good old days of when they were really strong, fit and at the top of their game, and just bask in that and become a cabbage, you know, and just sit around. Life's for living for me, you know. It's always the next challenge, the next thing to do, and so I guard myself against that. You know, I don't want to sit back and look back. It's not about what you did yesterday, it's what you might do tomorrow that's always kind of kept me going. I just believe in setting yourself new goals, new targets, always looking for the next place to explore.
Is it warm or is it me? I think it's me.
You're not having to work hard, are you?
Yeah. Like I say, I think it's might be an age factor.
The stories we tell about climbing often explore the extremes, but we don't all need to live up to those extremes. And of course, you don't have to be a climber to be courageous. Risk is a spectrum, and we choose how we interact with it. Despite the possible consequences, I'm not ready to leave this part of my life behind.
You have it.
And by the looks of it, neither is Pete.
Wunderbar.
But the beautiful thing about climbing is
Nice one, Pete.
Thank you very much.
we can choose what we want it to be. We write the story to our own adventures.
Brilliant.
You're well there, Pete.
It is done. It is done.
Life in the old dog yet.